Every story has chapters, main characters, recurring themes.
Disgusted. Disgusted.
This is the story of House Bill 206.
Decertify law enforcement officers found guilty of committing certain sex crimes. This is long overdue.
And Todd Walls
What a monster.
is the main character.
I feel like my silence has allowed him to feel entitled to keep a position in law enforcement. And I want to make the record very clear. He raped me. He took advantage of me. He committed crimes against a child.
We're not identifying this woman, as she's the victim of a child sex crime. Police records we obtained confirm she was 15 years old and having a sexual relationship with then Louisville police officer Todd Walls. It's taken 26 years for her to tell this story.
I was a child in a very grown-up situation, and you grow up really quickly. You know, I wasn't allowed to have a childhood because I was involved with an adult, and it's wrong.
May 1996. Police charge Walls with first and third degree rape, sodomy, and unlawful transaction with a minor.
These charges came about as a result of a warrant that was taken by the victim's mother in conjunction with a Crimes Against Children's Unit investigation.
The arrest citation says the victim passed out after drinking with Walls and woke up to find him having sexual intercourse with her. She was 15, he was about 28. The documents say they had sex several times in the course of 9 months.
He would come to my house, my mom's house, while she was at work.
WDRB obtained the Crimes Against Children's police file, 73 pages, much of it too graphic to air. It includes a transcript of a phone call the detectives recorded between Walls and the teenager as they discussed their sex life. She asked, "Was I good in bed for a 15-year-old girl?" Walls responds, "Heck yeah."
That really was a situation to happen to a kid, and I've thought about it several times throughout the years.
She says Walls befriended her at age 14 when he took her into custody, that their intimate relationship was not forced, but that she was a troubled teen and not old enough to consent. She told investigators, quote, "He just used me." She now believes the justice system failed her.
I just don't think that they cared enough about me to make sure this guy never served.
Walls quit Louisville police and cut a quick plea deal. All felonies went away. Court records from the time show he pleaded guilty to one misdemeanor count of sexual misconduct. He served 2 years probation and paid a $65 fine, then went back to his law enforcement career, working in Taylorsville, even serving as police chief in West Buchel.
Sexual assaults are some of the hardest to prosecute and to investigate. And so oftentimes things that your viewers may see as pretty heinous sexual assault crimes get pled down to or even just charged as misdemeanors. And a misdemeanor conviction doesn't preclude someone from becoming a police officer in the state.
Representative Rachel Roberts survived child sex abuse, and she sponsored House Bill 206.
There was a loophole in our law.
It now requires the Kentucky Law Enforcement Council to decertify officers convicted of misdemeanor sex crimes. No license, no job.
There are certain crimes that we as a society have to say, no, this is too egregious. This is too violent. This is too bad of a crime.
The bipartisan bill passed unanimously in the last legislative session and took effect last month, but it may not work. What about expungement? So if an officer has their record expunged, are they meant to be removed or decertified under this bill?
Gilbert, I can't answer that.
Wall's attorney says in 2015, the officer's record was expunged, wiped from the court's history with a judge's order. That can't happen anymore. Sex crimes of any kind or those involving a child are no longer eligible for expungement in Kentucky.
It may very well be that there are other parts of this bill that we'll need to address in the future, but the underlying purpose of the bill stands.
Walls is not the only officer with this in his history. 206 is part of a series of bills passed by the legislature in recent years to force out officers who shame the badge. New measures require departments to report those who quit under investigation and bolster the power of the Kentucky Law Enforcement Council to more easily revoke the certifications of officers who broke the law.
All for it, 100%. Yeah, they need to get rid of the people that are bad.
The Justice and Public Safety Cabinet told WDRB KLEC can decertify officers under House Bill 206, even if the criminal record is expunged. KLEC also told police chiefs and sheriffs throughout the state to notify the agency if there's an officer with a misdemeanor sex crime on their staff.
That brings to light a very big question. Does the Kentucky Clean Slate Law, which is expungement falls under, does it outweigh the new HB 206 or vice versa?
In 2020, the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office hired Todd Walls.
What would you say to all the chiefs and cities that have hired him throughout the years?
Why? Why?
That's part 2 of our story.
I mean, you can give us a bloody nose on this, Gil, and there's no way to put a smile on it for us.
Thursday on WDRB News.
He's done an excellent job with no problems.
The Jefferson County Sheriff's Office hired Todd Walls in September 2020. The latest stop in an embattled policing career. Walls was charged with rape and other sex crimes for a relationship with a 15-year-old girl in 1996.
I feel like my silence has allowed him to feel entitled to keep a position in law enforcement.
That victim recently spoke to WDRB.
He took advantage of me. He committed crimes against a child.
Walls pleaded the case down to a single misdemeanor sexual misconduct conviction and later got the court record expunged, according to his attorney. But troubles followed. Employment documents show in the years since he was terminated by both Taylorsville and West Mutual Police. We also learned through court records the state of Kentucky voided his retirement and ordered him to repay thousands in benefits.
He is exposed to losing a great deal more than simply the income.
That was due to allegations of a prior agreement to retire and return to his position in West Mutual, which would have violated a state policy. But the city ultimately fired him.
Should this department have hired Todd Walls?
Carl Yates is the second highest ranking officer in the sheriff's office.
It's a decision to be made. Sometimes you make the right one, sometimes you make the wrong one. I don't know that we made the wrong one or the right one in this case.
He says the agency's background investigation found no evidence of a prior child sex crime against Walls.
We asked legal counsel and we were told that it means it never happened. When records are expunged, it means it never happened.
How can you erase history, though? You can erase a criminal record. You can say the criminal record of the court proceedings are gone.
Mm-hmm.
But
and all documentation.
A physical act happened, right? You can't erase history.
It means the records don't exist. So in a way, you are erasing history.
Expungement is the legal process where an arrest, charge, or conviction are completely removed from someone's criminal record. It does not require any private citizen who ever had a copy of the records to delete them.
The sheer ridiculousness of the fact that someone could commit crimes like that and remain in law enforcement for years is something I don't think I'll ever get over. I could not even imagine that.
Dr. David Raper says he has several copies of Todd Walls' Crimes Against Children file.
Dr. David Raper, who is the constituent who brought this bill to myself.
Lawmakers thanked him by name at a bill signing ceremony.
He's been a real advocate for this for several years.
Raper, Walls' former neighbor, wrote to every member of the legislature laying out the loophole that misdemeanor sex crimes didn't require the state to take an officer's license.
Do you think it's a good idea to hire a child sexual offender to be a cop or to allow them to continue to be a cop? Do you think that's a good idea?
More so, that something needed to be done to stop the system from looking the other way or allowing a slap on the wrist when an officer breaks the law.
Did you know that Todd Walls had been charged with a sex crime in the 90s?
We knew there were allegations of that, yes.
Raper also shared the file with WDRB. We authenticated it with one of the original investigators on the case, including this transcript of a phone call recorded by police of Walls and the young girl talking about their sex life. When the sheriff found out we had it, he took Walls' gun and badge and placed him on desk duty.
And it all result of what you brought to light, and we're appreciative of that.
Do you still think that that background check was extensive?
I think the one area that we could have gone farther would be the archives.
Yates says the sheriff's office sent a background request to LMPD and it came back with nothing of note on Walls. But Walls never worked for this agency. He worked for the old city police department prior to the Louisville-Jefferson County merger. The graphic, detailed CACU report was sitting in those old city police archives.
Didn't your agency have the due diligence to go beyond a records request? To pick up the phone, to do some police work here?
I think we did our police work, Bill. And so I think we did the best we could at the time. You know, especially operating under the confinements of the Kentucky Clean Slate Law. You had to walk a tightrope between stepping on people's rights. Even police officers actually have rights.
This man was accused of raping a child. Didn't your agency have the responsibility to find the full truth?
I think we tried to do that. You got some information we didn't get. Let's just give you credit for that and not criticize us, okay?
Walls is on a year-to-year contract with Jefferson County. The sheriff's office says it's up in September.
The sheriff will decide if it's going to be renewed or not, but it certainly is in jeopardy right now.
What do you do if a judge ignores the law?
I can speak as the victim here, and I'm telling you, it makes you feel violated all over again.
It's the question this woman wrestles with day after day.
And wouldn't wish this on anybody.
Questioning how the man who had sex with her when she was 15 and he was a 28-year-old Louisville police officer,
just like I am a spot on his shoe that, they just wiped off.
got the criminal record expunged.
For that to be thrown out, no, it's wrong.
We're not identifying Todd Walls' victim, but we did set out to get her question answered. To start, we reviewed every version of Kentucky's misdemeanor expungement law going back to 1992 and brought in attorney and former judge Benham Sims to weigh in.
I am as pro-expungement as you can be.
He lobbied for and helped write some of the state expungement statutes.
I was shocked.
And even he says Walls' case should not have qualified.
Both Democrats and Republicans said very clearly they did not want this to be a bill to assist people who have sexual offenses or offenses against children. And my goodness, on this case, it involves both.
So how did it happen?
The only record we have was a expungement order that had a notation on it.
Commonwealth Attorney Tom Wine's office prosecuted the case. He showed us paperwork dated July 1st, 2015, signed by now former Jefferson Circuit Court Judge James Shake. We're told Shake didn't just expunge Walls' record, it was vacated, basically dismissed, meaning the conviction itself is gone.
That opened the door for this opportunity to expunge.
Wine says with the case vacated first, Shake expunged Walls' criminal record under a different statute. The expungement law is for someone who'd been acquitted or just arrested, rather than someone who'd pleaded guilty. The difference is what's missing in the law. That provision, blocking sex crimes or crimes against children from being wiped away, didn't apply.
Isn't that not violating the spirit of the law?
I'm agreeing with you that it should not have been expunged if there was a conviction. I'm also suggesting that it probably should have never been vacated because of the public trust.
Why not in 2015 stand up and say, hey, something's going down here that isn't right?
I'm not trying to avoid responsibility. I'm responsible for everything that happens in this office. But I have to know about it in order to act on it.
Wine says his prosecutor, now retired John Ballier, did object to Walls' expungement, but didn't send the judge's decision up the chain. Shake has also since retired. He responded to my emails and at first agreed to an interview, but then declined, saying he didn't remember the case and was ill.
Mr. Sheikh, this is Gilbert Coursey from
He also didn't
WDRB
return
News
3 phone calls.
in relation to Todd Walls.
I don't know who this judge, how dare he? How dare he?
There is a law, 6002, that gives judges the right to vacate a conviction. It's most often used when there's been fraud, perjury, or some other circumstance that tainted the case. That did not appear to be an issue with Walls. Remember, WDRB obtained the Crimes Against Children Unit police file. It contained a transcript of a phone call detectives recorded between Walls and the teenage victim as they talked about the details of their sex life. She asks, "Was I good in bed for a 15-year-old?" He responds, "Heck yeah."
So nothing can happen with this? Nothing can happen here now?
I've asked our appellate people to look at it.
Why Sheikh would throw out the guilty plea remains a mystery 7 years later, but the impact matters greatly today because it could allow Walls to get back his badge. He was fired from the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office last month after House Bill 206 took effect. The legislation requires the Kentucky Law Enforcement Council to decertify officers convicted of misdemeanor sex crimes. No license, no job. But with Walls' conviction vacated as if it never happened, it's now the basis for his appeal.
I wish that I could go back and make it never have happened. I can promise you that. But it did.
May I have appearances first for the Commonwealth?
It happened fast.
We really didn't expect that.
The hearing lasting about 7 minutes.
We're not asking to unexpunge the case, for lack of a better term.
But the outcome may begin to walk back what happened 7 years ago.
Your Honor, it certainly sounds to me like they're trying to unexpunge it.
Judge Annie O'Connell allowing prosecutors to open a door to investigate how Todd Walls' case was overturned.
It is hereby ordered the Commonwealth's motion is granted. The clerk's office shall arrange a time for the Commonwealth to inspect the paper and video record herein.
In 1996, Walls pleaded guilty to sexual misconduct, admitting he had a relationship with a 15-year-old girl while he was a 28-year-old officer with the old Louisville Police Department. He got the record expunged in 2015, sealing it from the public, unbeknownst to the victim.
I wish that I could go back and make it never have happened. I can promise you that. But it did.
It's been the subject of WDRB investigations for months. The case back in the spotlight as Walls tries to get back his badge. He was fired from the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office last summer after House Bill 206 took effect. The bill required the state to revoke the police certification of officers convicted of misdemeanor sex crimes. No license, no job. But Walls is appealing. His attorney saying that conviction no longer exists.
The charge was set aside and dismissed with prejudice.
The expungement statute is pretty clear that you cannot expunge anything that has to do with a sex crime or a crime against a child.
With Walls' case vacated first, the provision blocking it from being expunged didn't apply.
The only thing we have in our active file now is that one page that says vacated and now expunged.
Prosecutors say they have no record, no motion, nothing explaining why James Sheikh, the judge at the time who's since retired, set the conviction aside so many years ago.
I am going to grant the Commonwealth's petition to inspect records.
They will now be able to see for themselves. 7 minutes that will possibly walk back what happened 7 years ago. Imagine swearing to enforce the law, then being ordered by a judge to do something that breaks it.
It obviously raised red flags for us and kept us in the position of not knowing really what we can do about it.
Scott Miller says it's a position Kentucky State Police has been in for years, receiving expungement orders from judges across the state on cases that were not eligible to be sealed from public view.
So it put us in between a rock and a hard place of how are we going to comply with this court order while also comply with the statute.
Miller worked with state police for 19 years, first as a trooper, then as an attorney in the agency's legal office, and reached top command staff before moving to private practice. We didn't just take his word on ineligible expungement. WDRB has been investigating for months, sent numerous record requests, and put together a pattern, timeline, and proof of the problem. 2008, then KSP Commissioner Rodney Brewer was held in contempt for refusing to expunge a Jefferson County case that went against statute. Miller says KSP dug its feet in, but was told it didn't have standing, the legal right to challenge the problem.
We weren't involved in the case. We were just like a witness, so you can't file something if you don't have standing in the case to file it.
The case in question was erased, but a few skeletons of the contempt issue remains in state appeals court documents, and it's here where we found a pattern. Between 2007 and 2019, the Kentucky Court of Appeals reversed at least 14 expungement cases, 9 from Jefferson County. All the decisions saying those expungements were improperly granted or the lower court erred as a matter of law. The problems continued even as the laws changed.
Well, it was frustrating at the time, and it didn't seem right that we did not.
Rick Sanders was KSP commissioner from 2016 to 2020. It's KSP and AOC, the administrative office of the court's job, to certify that a case is eligible for expungement. Once a judge signs off, the records are sealed and removed from law enforcement databases and public viewing. Emails we obtained show checks and balances were still not followed, like this one from 2018. A former KSP staff attorney writes, "Despite us stating that a charge is ineligible under law to be expunged, some judges are ordering the conviction be expunged anyway," adding, "Sometimes our voices go unheeded."
Why not come out and publicly say, judges aren't following the law or the spirit of it?
I don't think the public outcry would be the venue in which to appeal this. I think this needs to be handled within the courts, within the administrative office of the courts.
KSP started sending county and Commonwealth attorneys letters when they received expungement orders that conflicted with the law, trying to get them walked back.
Oftentimes you could resolve it through a conversation.
But sometimes it didn't work.
Were there times where judges said, "This is my order, you need to follow it"?
Yes.
The case of Todd Walls shows why this all matters. The former Louisville officer had a sexual relationship with a 15-year-old girl when he was a 28-year-old man. He confessed in 1996, but in 2015, former Jefferson County Circuit Court Judge James Shake set aside that guilty plea and expunged Walls' case.
I can speak as the victim here, and I'm telling you, it makes you feel violated all over again.
Back in 1996,
the victim's attorney,
he was facing several serious felony charges.
Now trying to get the conviction reinstated 7 years later. My phone started ringing right after our initial reports on Walls. Current and former workers in Kentucky's Justice Cabinet fed up, all saying he wasn't the only one, that questionable expungements were a constant problem, too many to count all across the state. Sources who couldn't talk on camera out of fear they'd lose their job were told at one point KSP just had a stack of ineligible expungements sitting in limbo.
I don't think this issue was resolved by the time I left the state police.
Do you have any context if it was 1 or 2 orders a year, 1 or 200, 1 or 2,000? How many years are we talking about here?
Yeah, I really don't know.
The problem passed down the line from administration to administration since at least 2008, and what happened to that stack remains a mystery. The current KSP commissioner and secretary of the Justice Cabinet did not respond to our repeated requests for interviews.
Unfortunately, that's something that we'll have to discuss at a later date.
When we tried to speak with outgoing Kentucky Supreme Court Justice John Minton,
do you have the capacity to order an audit of this issue, or do you have a state agency saying this has been a problem for more than a decade?
Well, I know that if it's a state agency, it's a state police. They know how to bring it up, and we know how to address it. So that's all I can say.
He said he wasn't aware of this problem. The Administrative Office of the Courts did issue a statement saying, as elected officials, judges are empowered with judicial discretion to decide the matters that come before them. The AOC, as the administrative arm of the state court system, has no authority to influence or express opinions on judicial decision-making. The AOC does not audit the decisions made by the courts.
I think it absolutely needs to be cleared up.